Good evening, everybody, and welcome to round 2 of the Simufur AM Championship here from a sunny circuit de Catalunya. Once again, brought to you on Simufur TV. Joined here once again by Plasmaraider, the usual suspects behind the race control of FezzFox, Spitzer on the safety cars, and well, some new shiny liveries this time around, Plasma, and some good big expectations to live up to after round 1.
Yeah, absolutely. Chloe's taken their transition into ACC and learning the sim a little bit more seriously, and has actually transferred their esports team's livery into ACC. If I remember correctly, they spent a good part of a few days trying to get that done, and I mean, it looks like it's transferred over quite well. But it's definitely going to be an exciting race here. Similar to Hungaroring, passing is going to be quite tough. So if it's going to be any kind of replication of that event, I definitely look forward to what we have here today.
Yeah, quite a lot of people up and down the week in the week break that we've had been practicing this track because it is quite a difficult one. There's been quite a lot of talk about some people's pace. Some people have really gelled with this track and really started to fly off, you know, using what their car's capable of. And some people are still struggling with it. But it is a track as well that can be quite a race of attrition. Track limits here are very easy, and it is very, very easy to bin the car if you are not careful.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes without mentioning is you can't have any weaknesses at this circuit. Catalunya being famous for being a Formula One test track for the past several years. And you have high speed, medium speed, low speed. You have your technical sectors, and you have the flowing section of 1 through 3. There's nowhere that you really can be weak as a driver if you want to succeed here. So you aren't going to see many drivers popping up out of nowhere, but you're really going to see the drivers that can extract the most out of their car at the top of that timing board, and possibly some crazy events coming through the races. Drivers get desperate to get in front whenever they see a window open.
Yeah, you have all the flowing sections, and then you have probably, arguably, the least flowing section in a GT3 car at all, which is that final chicane. It feels so clunky if you are driving one of the front-engine cars. If you've got a mid-engine car or one of the Porsches that, you know, adorn the track today, it's actually not too bad. You can kind of dance the car around, you know, under your foot, but with the front engines, you're just scrubbing it all the way, and actually through turn 3 as well. Tires are going to be pushed. Luckily today, even with the sun, the track temperature hasn't really soared as high as we have seen it before. It's when you come here and you've got a 40-degree track temperature with a 30-odd degree ambient, and you go through turn number 3 and you're just watching your tires basically turn to lava. It gets so hot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the expectations for a lot of our drivers are going to be that the front ends are going to struggle. But with that in mind, the Mercedes of Chloe's up in second through this practice session. So we could be seeing a little bit of mixing of the grid, mixing of the order. But I think it will be a little bit of our usual suspects. We saw Denak, Chloe, Astro, Ranami, all 4 of them impressed in the first round out in Hungaroring. So it would be really interesting to see how that works out, as Chloe is the odd one out with the front engine Mercedes. The rather intimidating nose of that machine going to be trying to find its way through that rather clunky chicane, as you mentioned. The car that almost seems too wide to make it through.
Yeah, very much so, and we've seen it before, or at least I have seen it before in certain events, people trying to go too wide down here. It often does not work. This section is just not 2 GT3 cars wide, as we can see watching Fane come through some of the final corners now in the RK9 Aston Martin. Once again, another very colourful livery running up to the line, and this will be sort of the last few practice laps that everyone's going to get. Some drivers still out trying to learn the circuit. Track time here really is a is a great feature.
Yeah, absolutely. Coming into qualifying, that track time is going to be one of the most important things that you could have had. And any mistakes through that first sector, all the way up to turn 5, and that's going to be heaps of time if you don't set that up correctly. Qualifying, really going to be on a knife's edge. And that's going to probably be the biggest focus for any of our drivers. Not so much setting the perfect lap time, but making it so you aren't leaving any big mistakes on the table, because couple of inches too wide, half a car length here or there, that's going to cost you buckets of time, similar to what we saw in the last sector in Hungaroring. And I don't think a perfect lap will come out from anyone, but it's going to be who can set the best lap relative to what they can do.
Not just that as well, but track limits here is very, very easy in multiple points to ruin your lap time, and then you have to, you know, reset and do it all over again. And it's not exactly a very quick lap around here. It's not the longest track in ACC, but it also ain't the shortest by a long stretch of the imagination. And like I said, a lot of times, turn 3, you can run out wide there, you can pick up an invalidation. This set of turns, you can easily run all 4 wheels across those rumble strips. That's an invalidation. And then if you don't invalidate it there, this corner at the top of the hill, you run too far wide over those green, the AstroTurf there, that's also an invalidation. There are multiple points where you can ruin your lap time, and you just have to go around all again. But I think the 604 is actually letting the what would have been your championship leader had they not got the drive-through at Hungaroring. That's Danak through, so it'll be a Ferrari to take us round the first time on the grid.
Yeah, absolutely. Danak proving their pace in Hungaroring. Unfortunate for the drive-through in the final lap of the race too, but they're going to be setting off for their first lap of the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya as we go down one of the longer pitch straights of our year. It's going to be rolling through the gears, only in 5th, getting to 6th around the timing tower, going and setting up into the downhill braking zone, using a little bit extra curb coming in and avoiding the invalidation. And it's going to be a late apex to set up for 1 and sweeping yourself up to open up turn 3. Maybe a little bit tight coming into 3. Is going to be doing a little understeer, but getting a good modulation of power and getting the drive into 4. 4 going to be late on the brakes, carrying your speed through. It's all about keeping that minimum speed up. It looks like Denek's able to get good compliance from the front end of the car. And into 5, the downhill left-hander always wanting to understeer. That front left is screaming, and no, it's screaming for Denek's turn as it's unable to get the front end of the car in and up into one of the trickier high-speed sections of the track. You have 7 into 8, easy to pick up too much curb on the right here, pieced together nicely, and then nosing the car in hard into 9, balance it, and don't get too late on the throttle because you have the long straight here in the back section. Your front tires are screaming right now, overheated, but you're hard on the brakes, pushing it into 10, making sure that you get the car rotated and set up into one of the most technical sectors of the calendar. You gotta open up for 11 and 12, set the car up for a late apex to drive down into 13. An off-camber right-hander with a lot of curb on the inside. Make sure you don't go too wide, otherwise you're going to hurt through the chicane. Maybe a little bit too narrow on entry, but piece together nicely for the exit, using a little bit of that exit curb on the outside to get that best run in the straight. And that's going to be the first lap time of the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya, and 1:45.3 is the benchmark to beat.
And that is a very, very competitive time immediately out of the gates for the Tigan Racing 54 Ferrari. And this is one of the cars that has been, you know, talking about in the week. They had, or they've proven in hot lap mode, you know, that this car can be very, very blazing. Even with Denak saying that, you know, that's not his pace overall. Well, the fact that you at least can do the lap once, it shows that the drivers are improving. Looking back down the field, Chloe comes across the line in P2 position, the first go around, very, very close, a 1:45.392 for the Olympus Esports driver. But we know for a fact that that Mercedes, it takes time to get its to get the tires up to temperature and to get the pressures correct, as Astro Black comes flying across the line, almost a 1:45 dead.
Absolutely. And Asher, one of the drivers that we talked about and really kind of showed their mettle in Hungaroring, starting from the last or second to last place after not qualifying there and coming through to win, inherit that win after Denek's unfortunate drive-through. Now, getting the chance to actually qualify has proved to be already a much better start for them, as they are going to be jumping into that pole position, or that provisional pole position. The Lamborghini, similar to the Ferrari, though, it is a car that is going to get those tires fired up relatively quickly, as opposed to the Mercedes, who's already matching Denek's time with a car that's going to take a while to blend into those lap times. And it's really needing to use all the qualifying that's available to them.
Well, here comes back round for the 54 once again. I don't think that they're going to sit there for very long. And there you go, a 44.695 jumps Denak up back into the pole position. An absolutely stonking time. What can the 21, the Olympus Esports driver, say about this coming up to the line? It's an improvement, but it still is holding station in P3.
Yeah, but we know that time's going to come back to Chloe, and we only have 4 minutes left in qualifying, a short qualifying session for this series, but once those tires come up, that last lap's going to be crucial for the Mercedes drivers. But we also have Zar, RK9, representing the Aston Martin here, with KM Sarah actually following suit. So the front engines are actually very well represented coming through qualifying here. Maybe showing their pace a little bit better in qualifying that we had seen in some of the race practices. Zar's going to come across the line with a 5/10 improvement, but unfortunately no positions gained with such a big leap up. But still going to be good momentum built for the rest of qualifying here.
Yeah, but getting themselves that little bit closer back to Chloe, and that might show the pace of the Aston Martin. If they can hang on to the Mercedes in the race, that might prove, very, very good. The Mercedes can be a bit of a tyre chewer, depending on your setup, depending on how you drive it. The Aston Martin is generally a little bit more tame on it. Looking back down the field as well, some of the mid-engine cars that are trying to be represented as the Blue E, Wolf in Foxtail, the 529 runs it a little bit wide. Now that is an invalidation I've done myself many times. It's very easy to do, but you have to reset, try again. They will have at least 2 more laps. So for Blue E, it still isn't all over. Jasper is the next fastest Blue E driver in that P6 position, still holding station. But the delta at the minute is green.
Yeah, and that's what we talked about with Zara, is just that momentum is all the game in this kind of track. You're never going to set a perfect lap here. There's too many things that can go wrong. There's too many variables in this track to set that perfect lap. It's all about just improving and building that momentum, getting a better and better lap time, especially as this stop-start sector 3 is really going to upset any kind of momentum that you have. As we see randomly coming across the line, going from P18 to P6, 1.8 adrift to Denak, but this is a track they said they were not extremely comfortable with. And there was a bit of frustration throughout the week trying to get to grips with it, but still P6, a respectable time to build on, and that's going to be that momentum, that building. And leading into the race, that's going to be the most important thing, because this race is an hour long. It's not just a 10-minute quality session of hop in the best lap you can. It's going to be doing this track for a full hour, lap after lap, and keeping that momentum and consistency. And as typical to many of our tracks in the British calendar, coming through, having an off track is going to be seriously detrimental, not because of the gravel, but because of the lack of grip on the outside. You're going to lose buckets of time if you come off track. So consistency, both in qualifying and the race, is going to be one of the most important things to stress here.
And when you end up having to, actually battle in the race, the marbles that amass on this race circuit, just because of how many high-speed corners there are, if you go offline, it is really quite detrimental to your pace. You really notice it anything other than the optimum racing line. Wolf and Foxdale, a big improvement there, jumps himself all the way up into the P5 position of 46.4. Great improvement from the Blue E driver, actually puts them above their fellow car, and that will be the highest placed McLaren that we've got so far. So mid-engine slowly starting to come into their play, but right at the end of quali.
Yeah, but in addition to that, too, Denak immediately improved upon their time with a 44.3. So what can the TIG Gang driver of Randomie do? This is going to be an important lap for them as they head on to the final lap that they're going to take with 25 seconds to go until the end of qualifying. It's going to be a small improvement, but still trying to build that momentum up. It could be another position or two for Randomie, but it's definitely going to be a push as we see a gaggle of cars perhaps trying to get the slipstream off of each other. But I would argue that might not be the best thing here, as dirty air is quite prominent in these cars around the high-speed sections of this track.
Yeah, Hubble with a bit more of an improvement, as he says, maybe trying to get a little bit of slipstream. Pablo will be the last car to cross the line and do get a lap. Just squeezed it by as the 51 behind of Alex. The checkered flag has come down for them. A few people have already called it in the pit lane. So this is the last chance for anyone to make an improvement, and coming up very soon will be the end of Denak's last chance to make an improvement. It's still green, but he does have a Blue E driver right in front of him.
Yeah, and this is the worst place to catch someone. This is where you need your downforce, the obstacle section of turn 13, and the rhythm that you need to carry into the chicane. Super important, but looks like he's going to get away with it. And the blue driver not slowing him up, and they're going to pull aside, let him take that run into the final straight. And he it is an improvement of a tenth. So now it's going to be what answers do the rest of the grid have. The next driver up is going to be Chloe up in P4 trying to cross the line. And also, we have the fellow Tick Gang racing driver of Randomy still to come. So it's not over yet. Unfortunately for Chloe, I'm not able to improve 1 second adrift is going to be where the cards fall. But Randomy, certainly you'd imagine the same setup, the same car, has the best opportunity to take this provisional pull from Denak. But what's the time going to be? It is not going to be good enough. A small improvement, but nowhere near enough to take that position from Denak, who's been honestly untouchable through this qualifying session.
Some of the last cars coming through that are still on a valid lap or a improvement lap. JPEG-Fox improves a little bit once again, but holds station in that P11. Big gaggle of cars looking back. You have Neo still trying to come across the line, but it will be P16 overall for that driver.
Yeah, it's a very tense qualifying, that's for certain, as we saw a couple of cars come together. Or not so much come in contact, but were grouped up and were creating their own little packs to sort out qualifying. You know, some of those drivers certainly are going to be wondering, okay, did this help me or did this hurt me? And am I farther back because of it? And what can I do? Do I need to get past these cars or maybe next time just avoid that situation as a whole because that could play both ways. I mean, maybe if you're a driver with not a lot of confidence on the car in the corner, following another car could be massive. But if you're a driver that had been hop lapping this track over and over again, coming in and you're on the limit in those corners, that dirty air could have been a massive detriment to your time. So you could have both the highs and lows from that. I really wonder what each of the drivers in those packs were thinking as they kind of rolled into them.
Yeah, very much so. So for this time around, it will be Denak who takes your provisional pole position. Czar in P2 in that AMR V8, the highest placed front engine, followed up by Astro Black. Now, interestingly, Denak didn't hold all three purple sectors. He only held two of them. Astro Black 2 tenths faster almost in sector 1, so maybe the Lamborghini's got a little bit more under its foot than the Ferrari has. Just can, you know, tuck in the nose a little bit better, maybe into 3, because sector 1 really isn't much of a timing sector really for corner wise. This is the part of the show while people are getting their setups ready and getting grid up. We show you the standings as they stand. After round 1, it was Czar who's leading the charge with that sort of surprise win after the unfortunate drive-through from Denak and Chloe. And bearing in mind as well that Astro Black is still classified as a national, so they didn't score any points, so it would be Czar who took the most points. Randomy just a little bit behind with a fantastic recovery drive really from what happened to them at the start of the race, and JPEG-Fox who just kept it clean, kept it calm, and brought home a podium position. You have Denak who slots back into the 4th place. Very, very unfortunate driver. We'll definitely be watching the track limits this time and keeping a note on where where all the warnings lie. And Wolf in Foxdale rounds out your 5th place. Once again, a driver we didn't really talk about much at Ongara, just because they didn't have quite a mad race. Slowbird really showing what the Jaguar can do. 6th place for that. Managed to fend off Snowy in the Mercedes AMG, the big brute, still going along. You have Geeg in the AMR with the 11 points in the 8th place. Jinfolf still got a good score from round 1 with 10 points to the name. Vane in the AMR V8, that's the second RK9 car with 9 points. Pablo in the McLaren didn't have necessarily the race they entirely wanted with 8 points. Sarah in the very striking Aston Martin with a black and red livery, it has 7. Jasper ends up with 6. Sefi has 5 in the fellow Porsche 911. We've got a few of them this year. Ruby Kitsune on 4. Telephones gets 2 points as your last points scorer on the grid. And ZZ, unfortunately, had none in the 911.
Yes, but I think the important thing for all the drivers in our top 16 there, all those that scored points, it's It was the name of the game of qualifying here. It's momentum, momentum, momentum. It's the first round of the championship. You're not trying to break any records. You're just trying to do the best that you can, and put yourself in the best position come the end of the season. So, it's going to be a good result for any of those drivers that have scored already. Unfortunate for those that had not, but it also opens up the opportunity of here in round two. There's just as many points offered here as there were in round one. So as much of a time to make a statement, as much of the time to shout for your position in the standings as last week out. And certainly there's going to be a few drivers here that are going to be trying to make sure that that shout is heard. We roll down the grid. We have Denak followed by Czar in the Arcade 9 livery, who I'd mistakenly said was on their own. But now it's going to be Astro and Chloe who are going to be filling out those second row of the grid. That's going to be a very tricky one going into turn one. The Ferrari's good on the top end, and the Aston not the strongest coming down the straight. Certainly going to be a interesting gaggle by the time we reach the first braking zone. There's the Olympus Esports livery we had mentioned earlier. Chloe, new to the grid this livery from last week out. We were treated to maybe a more generic livery, but now we get the esport design of their iRacing team as the rest of the grid's going to take off the TIG Gang livery, followed by Blue EKM and the rest of our crew running down the pit straight and trying to sort themselves out, get those temperatures into the tires, and make sure that by the time you hit those brakes into turn one, you have all the grip on offer that you need. Because coming into turn one, turn two, turn three, very, very grip limited corners. If you don't have those tires fired up, you're going to be losing a lot of positions, and you're going to be losing them very quickly.
Yeah, and speaking about liveries that have had slight changes as well, we had a few that were told that they've been changed. One, we can now tell that that Snow, the car is definitely green. Last time I mistaked the green and I was punished for it, so now he's found the bucket of, I think, health and safety fluoro paint from RS Components and slapped that on the car. And you also have FezzFox running the more festive liveried, with the reefs around the wheels. I think also I saw a blue E car with a which almost looked like a candy cane spoiler. Now I don't know if that was a do not push or if that was a Christmas themed. Maybe it could double as both.
I believe it could, but from talking to some of the drivers, yes, there was a festive livery change for this race, and I believe the rest of the season. As you can also see on the barge boards on the side, right behind the front wheel, there's also a bit of a festive theme for the identifying characters that they have on their liveries, as well as a little Santa hat to top it off. So that is a change that was there for the holiday season. We do like to see that holiday spirit coming in, and just a little bit of extra cheer kind of shared on the grid. Is this is still more for fun rather than trying to throw sponsors out and make sure that we're all trying to make money off of it, because at the end of the day, where this is our AM championship, focus on development. This is where our drivers get to show their worth and also focus on improving their racecraft skills. So glad to see a bit of lighthearted nature coming in from some of the teams here, even if it is just a small livery change.
Yeah, and this will be the last race and the last stream of 2022. We have a little bit of a break for the holiday period, for whatever holiday you may celebrate. Then the drivers come back in January 2023 to continue on the championship. So it's going to be the last one of 2022, the last stream. It's been definitely a busy year for Simufur, one where we've kind of gone. I'd like to say that we've gone from strength to strength, and now we're sat here being able to broadcast the races that once we only we ran ourselves, and we knew that we existed, but nobody else did. But as everyone files up 2 by 2, it's definitely going to be interesting for the last go of the year. I'm wondering how good that RK9 car can start, because the AMG behind is really quite the hard charger.
Yes, and as we roll in on our slow speed starts, waiting for the green lights to go, and they have gone. But it's going to be the Mercedes already going for that hard charge. The RK9 AMG or Aston Martin unable to get the start required, and that Mercedes could be challenging for P1 into turn 1. Hard on the brakes we go. The Ferrari tight on the inside, and it's going to be a nose in, but it's going to be chopped off by Denak. Heads up driving from Chloe to give that up, but very unhappy with that. The little flash of the lights, trying to let their displeasure be known. But no, it's Jasper out into the gravel as the positions are going to be falling. We have a car off down into turn 3 on the entry. I believe that was a Ferrari of Alex. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was not one of the Tig Gang cars. That was our imposter in the orange Ferrari, as Astro's going to be falling back to 6 as well. Oh, actually, no, sorry. They have held position in 4th. Our timing screen playing a little bit of tricks on us. That Lamborghini, one of the cars that can fire up their tires quickly, already hounding the back of the Aston Martin. And it's going to be a long back straight for the RK9 driver of Czar. And going into turn 10, you really need to be thinking, all right, do I defend this? Do I take this position early on? Well, the decision has yet to be made because unfortunately, Astro too far away to make that lunge. So many of our drivers starting to file in, as is usual for Catalunya, and thus starts the process of finding the hard way past all these drivers because the mistakes are going to be few and far between.
Yeah, so something happened way back in the back of the pack, and also as if with the last round, live stewarding in effect here, so we might see some penalties come through. What exactly happened, we'll try and bring you that a bit later on in the race. But as everyone, like you said, starts to file out, tries to get that position, you know, to where they're happy with. It's Denak with the hard charge right at the start. 0.8 of a second already drawn out from them. And the fastest lap jumping around because I bet nobody's set a valid lap yet apart from Pablo on lap 1.
Yeah, no, and well, keep in mind, they're going to be further down that straight, so they'll have had that throttle pelted to the floor for just that little bit longer, and that will pay dividends in the first lap, so we won't get that true order until lap 2. Just to correct myself as well, I believe it was Firebrand that was unfortunately turned around, as it looks like Alex is actually in our top 5 there, just on the edge, but speaking of a position to be gained, Hubble is currently trying to defend from Neo here. The BMW versus BMW battle, as it's going to be going into turn 4. The Porsche actually looking to take a bite of that pie. Coming into 5, looking around the outside, can't get the front grip as Neo's going to be able to hang on to that position. Certainly going to be holding on to that for the rest of the lap as we enter the technical section of the track. So Neil goes a little bit deep, and it could be a little bit of an issue going into the braking zone. Hubble looking to chase down the McLaren of Ruby in front of them as ZZ's putting on the pressure behind them, keeping them a little bit protected from Neo. This could be quite the race coming into the hairpin turn 10, 3 wide. Fane going on the inside with the double overtake, and ZZ trying to look for the cutback going into 11. The drive comes out of that Porsche, but Neo also taking that position back as Fane can't get it hooked up. And the double overtake is now double gone as ZZ moves up 1 position, and then also is able to get that position away from Neo, who just about holds on to that P16 spot. And I didn't expect this to be going 3 wide this early in the race.
Oh, there was a one of the BMWs looked very, very slow and ended up everyone with 3 wide. It says Fane tried the late on the brakes, the double overtake. You can do that at that hairpin, but it is so hard to get it hooked back up, especially in an Aston Martin. Once you bog them down a lot, they really do not enjoy sort of getting back up on the power band again, and you're just struggling, especially when you're battling a Porsche and a BMW where they are, you know, they can get up and go quite easily. So I think as well with the 2 cars ahead, it was Ruby who's the teammate of Neo's. Now there might have been as well, if Ruby ends up backing backing the BMW of Hubble up into ZZ, if those two battle, he can finally escape this madness.
Yes, but there's a big gap to close here as we see Neo taking a look around the outside of Ruby there in turn 5, an unconventional move that doesn't tend to work out. And now that's opened the door for ZZ's. We're going to be too wide, a little bit of contact coming into 7. And ZZ's got that inside line, certainly going to be able to hang on, but Ruby a little bit wide. And this could be too wide going down the straight again as we have side by side going into 9. Neo able to get the drive to get away, but none of these drivers are giving an inch. We're only 5 minutes into this race, boys. We have 55 minutes to go as Fane's off track in the grass as we see Slowbird looking on the inside. Another dive into 10. Neo a little bit weak on the brakes, able to hang it around the outside. Fane keeping it out there, getting that drive out. And we're going to see Slowbird and I believe Hubble dropping back with that little bit of a gaggle coming into turn 10 every single time we come into that braking zone. It's another bit of excitement. When will these drivers give any inches? We have Neo going off track now, coming to the chicane, able to gather it back up. But oh my, this is not going to stop anytime soon.
Oh, people trying to finally find any amount of space on the racetrack. Very, very dangerous maneuver. Here comes the Jaguar, though. The speed of the old gen cars, you really can't, we can't beat it in a straight line. And look at that, there goes the Jaguar flying by the BMW in the background as well. That is Hubble trying to get a little bit of a tow from his fellow BMW, but very scary moments as that's one of the McLarens off.
Oh boy, yes, I believe that was Jasper coming into contact with Ruby and Hall. They're coming in contact again, trying to sort themselves out. Good avoidance from the rest of the pack, though, coming through there, but that's opened up our grid a little bit more. Here's JPEG's looking around the outside of Hubble trying to get another position, and that Porsche's going to be diving in deep, able to hook it up. Just need to get the drive out, and JPEG will be able to hang it through. But Hubble able to get a good drive out in that BMW. Can we see another move around the outside of turn 5? JPEG certainly going to shove them out, but no space left. So good etiquette coming from the Porsche driver, able to get that P16 from Hubble and move up towards the rest of the grid. As we move up the grid towards Pablo, is a little bit of contact with Sarah coming into turn 12. Oh, the Aston Martin, I think, able to recover that, but certainly a lot of time lost from that front to rear contact. And yes, they're able to get it going again, but now they're under pressure from Snowy, and any damage on the front of that car is going to immediately be felt down this main straight. And that's going to be a very long straight of reflection indeed, because that Mercedes is very strong in a straight line, and so I'm sure Sarah's eyes are going to be firmly planted in the mirror.
Yeah, Sarah already moved over trying to break the toe, but as she says, when you end up with this single file, you have to start looking for positions. The door was left open briefly, but it was a gap that always going to close. I ended up having to, take avoiding action, spun the car around, and well, like I said, the Aston Martin continues driving, but all of these little dings and dents are, one, going to slow you down in the pit stop, and two, they're not going to look very well on the eyes of our live stewarding team.
No, absolutely not. There might be some humility shown with how early that incident was, and I think the fact that Sarah came off a little bit worse, but the driver that's trying to better their position is randomly chasing down Alex. Alex has been holding onto that P5 since the start of the race, but it looks like they might be the cork in the bottle in Randomy's race, so it might be a little bit of chaos coming in here as we see the pink mirrors on that TIG Gang racing machine coming into turn 10, just looking for any gap, but unable to get close enough to make a send into turn 10. And Alex is just able to hook up the traction coming out of 10, really get that drive towards this technical middle sector, and this is where that dirty air might be coming in. We talked about in Hungaroring that dirty air in the Ferrari is quite aggressive compared to other cars, and through that middle sector you can see that it's really hard for Randomy to gain here. But coming down the straight, this is where Randomy is going to be in an element of his own, coming down in the suck of that P5 Ferrari, but unfortunately it looks like it's going to be too little too late. It's going to be another sector that is going to be forced to sit behind that rear wing of Alex's Ferrari.
Yeah, well, the Ferrari already, creates a massive wake behind it and already really suffers from the aero wash, but it might be ended up unsettling themselves, did the 51. When you lose that rhythm, you lose the momentum, and there you go. The 73 slips back up the inside. Now it's Alex's turn to feel the wake of the dirty air washed off from a Ferrari, and considering you're in matched machinery, it already makes it difficult to pass, and then you've made it just that little bit harder with the dirty air. Slowbird looking up the inside of Fane, the Jaguar speed, trying to get it down the main straight, but you have to brake a little bit earlier in this old school machinery.
Yeah, that and the trust on Fane to let Slowbird get that Jaguar stopped is absolutely chopped the nose off of that British machine. And clearance was there, but it was very tight. Moving up the order, we see Astro putting a little bit of pressure on Chloe. And just a little bit of a race recap as we take over 10 minutes here. Denak has pulled a 3-second gap on this pair as Chloe and Astro have filed out to be that second and third position. Czar 1.3 seconds back in P4, and Randomly, who had just saw make that move for P5. 6 seconds adrift trying to chase down this lead group again, but this is already looking like Denak's race to lose. And again, the battle of Chloe and Astro for who can finish up in second position. And it's gonna be a long race for these two yet again, I feel.
Yeah, and Chloe with the immediate defensive maneuver, chopping down hard, not wanting to give the draft at all, even with the AMG's straight line speed. You don't want to give any kind of, advantage to your opponent. The 63, though, in the Sector 1, look at how much you can point the nose of a mid-engine, whereas the front engine, you're waiting for the car. Mid-engines, that ain't so. You can tell the car where to go. I mean, that can also be a downfall. You tell it where to go, and you will spin yourself around. No, because I've done that many times, but the 63 now really starting to put the pressure on for that P2 spot.
Absolutely, and you see Czar again just peeking out in the back and just reminding these two drivers, if they look a little bit further back, that any mistake is going to be another position lost. And I think Astro is eyes firmly forward at that Mercedes AMG as the gap has shrunk to just under 0.2 of a second. And that's a dangerous gap coming onto the back straight here, especially with the compliance of the front end of that Lamborghini. The Mercedes has the straight line speed advantage, but that Lambo has the draft. But even with the draft, looks like that Mercedes still able to pull a massive margin on that back straight. But a little bit of a wiggle coming from Chloe in that traction zone. It looks like Astro able to avoid. The gap's going to stay around the same. The long straight coming up. It's going to be super important to set that up through the chicane. Here's a little bit of a wiggle from Astro here. Both drivers leaving everything on the table, and we have 47 minutes to go. Well, calm down, boys and girls and non-binary pals. We have a long race ahead, and you still got to keep those tires all the way to the pit window. Opens up in 7 minutes, by the way, but that means you'll have 40 minutes on a fresh set of boots, and that's, I don't think, the optimal strategy for this event.
No, and you see, though, even with the slipstream there, how powerful the Merc is, but Chloe's off, run out too wide, and there you go. The 63 of Astro Black managing to get it, and Czar also gaining at that position. Chloe far off the track, and that was the thing. It was maybe a little bit late on the brakes into one, and when you upset your rhythm through that section, you completely upset yourself for 2 and 3, and you can easily run off the circuit there. So it's a sad time for the AMG, and I believe that they've just disappeared off the timing tower.
Yes, possibly mechanical failure, I'd have to imagine, because they didn't move much on our track map there after running into the runoff there into the gravel. I had a hard time seeing it as anything else, and that's going to be really unfortunate. That's going to kill any of the momentum that they had built from their last round. Your heart goes out to that. If it is a mechanical failure, we'll have to get word on that at a later date. That is extremely unfortunate. As Sarah running wide into the gravel, many of our drivers going on a hiking expedition through the gravel traps, and many of these under trays on these race cars are going to be pitted and cratered from the stones kicking up into them. Sure, none of the team owners are going to be very happy about that.
No, exactly. There's also been an incident between the 512 and the 519 the 529 and the 512. The 512 still creating a local yellow. And I'm wondering if once again that might be another mechanical failure, as they're still on the wrong way around. There we go, as Hubble recovers the car, gets back going again, because that's the other thing that we haven't seen yet, but it isn't out of completely out of the question. We do still have the safety car, which can be deployed, and we saw you know, some people use that to great effect in their strategy at Hungaroring. So it's not out of the question yet that we might see a moment from that. But now here comes Snowy in the AMG, trying to chase back up to the back of that V8 Vantage. And while Sarah's been battling Pablo and having these you know, running off wide and having issues, it's allowed Snowy to catch right back up, and you do not want an AMG right behind you coming onto the main straight.
No, absolutely not. We've seen how much the AMG is able to pull on the straight, even against the Lamborghini and on that back straight with Chloe. But we're going to see Fane pulling alongside the bluey car of Jasper and trying to take a look on the inside. A nice late dive. The position is going to still be under threat. Is a little bit of contact coming from Jasper, sending that RK9 Aston Martin a little bit wide. Looks like they're able to keep it on track though, so no significant time lost, but the time being bled massively. It's hemorrhaging from Sarah here as they keep catching back up to Pablo even with their mistakes, and that has allowed Snowy to make this a 3-car battle, each car covered by 4/10 a pair. And oh my, there's going to be a little bit of a deep move coming from Pablo. Sarah's able to take advantage, but now Snowy a little bit deep and back into the back of, oh, that was Pablo going into turn 12. Pablo able to get it spun around. Snowy stuck in the middle of the track, able to roll it off, clear the hazard for the other drivers, but oh, that's not going to be very well looked upon by the stewards. Pablo did have a right to that corner, and it looked like Snowy had a clumsy little moment trying to take evasive action. That could be damage to either car as well. That might send them into pits early as soon as we see this pit window open.
I think that's definitely will be damage to the front splitter and the rear wing of the 64 there. And as he says, 64 went deep. That allowed Sarah around finally, but in doing so, really compromised their run. Snow had the better run through the corner, got up to the McLaren probably a lot quicker than they might have been expecting, and it just all came together at that one corner. So as he says, stewards will be starting to look upon these things, and it will be interesting to see what might come of this. Out of a lot of the chaos that we've had at the start of the race, and this is why some people that we saw at Hungaroring made great gains by just running a very, very clean race.
Yeah, and that was Wolfen's race last week. We talked about them finishing with P5 in the standings right now because they had a very quiet race and just finished through. Well, the person having a quiet race this time around is going to be Czar, not really looking to stir up anything and rewrite the wheel, or reinvent the wheel. They're just cruising along in third place here, just taking any position that comes to them and not really pushing too hard, and doesn't look like that car's any way out of control like we have seen many of these other cars that are absolutely jumping over the limit back and forth and just being wrestled to try to keep the car straight. Well, Czar, quiet race, quiet time out in the Catalunya in that Aston Martin machine, but I have a hard time seeing any way that Czar could spice up their race. As we see a car off in the back, that was Firebrand. As Ruby kind of rolls around, yes, Firebrand in the wall, unfortunately in with some damage to the nose of that Ferrari, able to clear that incident for Denak to roll through, as Denak is now catching lap traffic for the first time. I believe Firebrand was the first car on track that they were being forced to overtake, as it's now going to be Hubble, the next car in line for Denak to set a lap behind. That's going to be a very demoralizing coming in with the first 20 minutes gone to have that Ferrari, that Tig Gang racing machine on the tail of your car. But Snowy on the tail of Neo here, trying to recover some positions. You see the straight line speed of the Mercedes, pulling in closer a little bit to that BMW, the high mounted rear wing, giving a good representation of how close, and Snowy looking straight through that rear wing, trying to find a gap in Neo's defense. but it's not going to be enough as the dirty air is going to be pushing the large nose of that Mercedes and all the engine underneath the bonnet back further away through sector 1. But Snowy's been strong through sector 2 here, able to roll it in nicely. A little bit of a wiggle as Neo gets the run out, and the Mercedes is waiting for that straight, going from 9 to 10. That's where this thing has proven its worth, and Snowy already bringing that gap back up to the rear wing of Neo. And vibrant green machine certainly going to be a distraction for the P12 driver in the 310 BMW. And I think this might be a chance for Snowy. If not now, it's going to be the main straight afterwards. And unfortunately, unable to get close enough, but Neo a little bit deep in the brakes, and maybe a little bit of distraction like we talked about with Snowy's colors as we take a look over the rear wing, as Neo now has to look behind at Jasper's McLaren, and it looks like that BMW might be struggling with damage or some kind of understeer, because that thing is not getting into the corners very well at all anymore.
No, exactly. The BMW is starting to ail, especially now as they're behind it. But there you go, the squirt of the throttle, and off the AMG goes back down the straight. This car is just terrifying in a straight line, as they might now come under 5 from Jasper, as the BMW has to go defensive. But look at the speed here from the 223. They're going to be on the outside. This is a move that you can make work if you hang around the outside, but they're cleared by turn 1. As she says, I think that BMW is ailing quite badly as the pit window has opened. We might see Neo dive down it. The 64 has also dived down it, as the first load of the stewards reports start to come in. We had one from qualifying, which is why the 96 started with a 5-second penalty, an unsafe rejoin in qualifying and making contact with car 51, which is why they started the lap with that 5-second. And cars 555, 529, 73 and 12, that is, I believe, the lap 1 incident. 5 seconds to car 12 for causing that collision. Lap 3, 96 and 529, a 5-second penalty to 96 for causing a collision. Well, we'll give the Bolly, the head steward, at least a brief moment, as the pencil is almost on fire trying to write down all of these incidents for us.
Yeah, quick fire unleashed on these drivers of any penalties that might have been accrued, as it seems like they are finally able to get that report sheet out to us, and just in time as that pit window opens, as many of these drivers are going to be able to serve those penalties underneath their pit window, and any safety card that comes out could be resetting those penalties immediately. So you'd imagine with many of these drivers, if you're getting that 5-second, 10-second penalty, you might want to be pitting a little bit earlier than usual, because they did see a safety car come out just at the end of the pit window last time around, and that benefited Astro Black massively. So maybe you want to take advantage of the same thing, because if you take that under safety car, that's going to be a little bit more painful, and also it's not going to reset yourself as much as it would getting it done beforehand.
Yeah, very much so. Looking back through the field a little bit, P9 though for the battle of P8, JPEG on ZZ. The battle of the Porsches, the two Porsches of today have found themselves on track, and as I said earlier, this makes it a little bit more difficult because both drivers want to do that late braking, which is that car's strong suit, and you can't outbrake your opponent, you'll end up in the gravel.
Yeah, and Porsche car I'm very comfortable with. It's going to be about getting those brakes nice and late, but getting that roll and release early. As it looks like both of these drivers are trying to roll out as much as possible. ZZ aggressive defense in the inside of 7, going through the right-hand kink of 8. We might see a little bit of momentum transfer, but no, JPEG unable to get alongside. And it's just going to be tucking underneath the rear wing. But that rear wing of ZZ is going to be kicking up a large wake for JPEG to stick his nose under, and it's going to be side by side in a 10. There's that late braking from JPEG, but is it too late? No, he's able to get it sorted out and get it nice and collected on the apex, roll it through into 11 and 12 with a gap forming to ZZ already.
You can really see the wake and the dirty air every single time we've seen a pass coming into that section. the amount that people run wide at the next corner just because the front aero really starts to, you know, fade away from the cars, and that's a thing that you have to, you know, take into account as a driver, especially multiple times, you know, when you start when you start really progressing in your ACC career, and maybe you start endurance races. When people lap you, you know, you really do notice your car just disappear for a corner or two, and you have to, you know, take that into account.
Yeah, certainly, especially as you get adjusted to it for the first time, as it looks like ZZ has started getting that adjustment in line because he is already right on the back of JPEG, getting that gap sorted out. But when that weight crosses your nose for the first time, it's almost a surprise. The first time that front arrow releases off of the car, and then all of a sudden you can't get it to nose into the corner. You have to completely change your driving style in some of these cars to try to get that to work out. So you say the first RK9 machine pitting of Fane, and with a little bit of damage to the front end of that car too, possibly playing a part in this early pit. But this is also the part of the race where I want to talk about, do you pit early? As we see many of these gaps pulled out, the new tires are going to give you a little bit of a pace advantage. We've seen how important it is to be in front with some of these cars. But with the track like Barcelona, Catalunya, that front left is going to be absolutely punished. So if you have to spend any more time on those tires than you need to, you're going to really struggle on the late phases of that stint. Now, the question is, for many of these drivers, is it going to be late or is it going to be now? Because it is now for Jasper as he sends that move to the inside of 10 with a very clean move onto Snowy, chasing down Slowbird now as it's going to be the battle of the top end with that Jaguar and McLaren, the British machines, trying to pump their motors as hard as they can. And I think that McLaren might have a little bit of an edge moving onto the main straight. The traction that is going to be able to get coming out of this final chicane, it's not going to be enough though, as we see the run that the Jag gets in the low end coming out of the final corner. Several tenths opening up in just a fraction of a second, it seems.
Yeah, the Jag, if it has one thing going for it, as we've got a car leaving the pit lane, clearing it quite easily, is Jasper at full race speed. The one thing that the Jag has for it, speed. And if you can get along with the traction control system, because it is quite archaic, it's a very, very old school system, even in the way it functions. It's not like some of the modern systems that, you know, take into account multiple things, not just steering angle and, you know, throttle position, where a lot of the cars even have TC2 to be, you know, really fine-tune it in. The Jag is pretty much all I have worked out in ACC is directly corresponded to how much steering you've got on. If you have more than about 5 degrees of steering, the TC will go nuts. As you can see, that start happening in a lot of the tighter, slower corners. The Jag doesn't have that run anymore. But the final corner, where you've not really got the steering cranked on as much, then it will really sing.
Yeah, and I mean, you see through this middle sector, that first sector even, that Jag is struggling to kind of pull this gap on Jasper, but that run that they're able to get on the final straight, and even coming out of turn 9 here as we see that gap open up. Jasper taking a little bit of a look, but not really able to get anything going, but that look is going to move Slowbird offline and off track as they have to concede that position coming into 11. And Jasper, at that little look, actually able to get Slowbird to react, unfortunately a little deep for the Jaguar driver. So they're going to have to turn their attention to behind as we have Fane on fresh tires going to be hounding them down immediately after losing that position to Jasper. But we see coming through here, the Jag is going to try to chase down the McLaren. Runs about equal coming out of the corner. Perhaps the Jag not the best run that they've ever gotten. I think that McLaren's going to get enough of a gap that's not going to matter. That straight line advantage that the Jaguar has going to be completely ruined by the dirty air thrown up by that McLaren through the first sector.
Yeah, and even without the greatest run, having just a quick look on my timing tower, it was almost a 1/10.5 gained, which is, you know, when you're talking about straight line speed cars, a length like that, a 1/10.5 is still quite a scary amount of time if you think about it over an entire stint. You know, especially when you're looking at your delta, just trying to keep it green is a positive. When you can gain that kind of time on someone, it is quite a funny feeling. As that was the car that I drove last season in Simufur, the GT4. The M6 is only one thing. It is a complete straight line Bolly. It's all it has going for it. Doesn't really have cornering. The traction control is okay, but when you can do 290 kilometers an hour at Paul Ricard and just blast past people like they don't even exist, you know, it gives you a slight fuzzy feeling. And then they just completely pass you like you don't exist in Sector 1, but we gloss over those things.
Yeah, but even then, looking at the McLaren, it's not slouching a straight line, so it's certainly just proving the strength of that Jag coming into the main straights. We see Firebrand coming in, the faux Tig Gang racing car, as they have let us know that they are their own group, and it's going to be coming in for their own set of tires, and P17, and J-Beg coming back out into P13. It looks like a ZZ. Oh no, ZZ had a moment coming into the pit lane.
I'm wondering... Get a quick race replay of this. I'm wondering, has the Catalunya pit lane claimed someone? Now, we didn't really mention this before, but the pit lane or the pit in Catalunya can be quite vicious. It is very bumpy and it runs a little bit wide, and ZZ just taps the wall. When the car starts bouncing like that, you do lose a lot of your steering and it becomes quite understeery, so there might be a little bit more damage on the 18 that they're going to have to fix now in the pits.
Yeah, it looks like a little bit of scuffs and marks on the front left of that Porsche. And I think that's gonna be a little bit of repair time coming into the pits, but one that doesn't need repair time is going to be Denak, who's run away with this race so far. After lap 1, I think they've lost about every car in their visual radius, and it's gonna be Czar coming in from P3. The RK9 machine is another car looking completely flawless, I must add. We talked about Czar having a very quiet race. Well, that just proves it with how little is on that car, and randomly promoting themselves up to P3 provisionally, of course, because they have not taken their pit stop yet. So we're now entering that phase where some cars have pit and some haven't, and they try to sort ourselves out, see who can get that undercut to work and who can get that overcut to work. Really important on how you treat those tires on the outlap. If you flash the surface of these tires, you're going to be struggling through the rest of the stint. If you overheat the surface too much, pick up a little bit of graining, that's going to really hurt you. So even though these drivers coming out on new rubber, they know they're going to have more pace, they still need to treat those tires with a bit of delicacy and make sure that they get them worn in properly. Otherwise, it's going to be the rest of their stint is just going to be suffering and not going to be able to do anything about it, because it all is in this crucial first 1-2 laps.
Yeah, and it's all come undone for the 96 of Jinfolf, the Kvetch Motorsports Academy driver. A stop-go 30 has been applied to them, and now I'm considering we don't have anything through from the stewards for this car yet. It will be a ACC assigned penalty, which meant that they sped into the pit lane, which is another thing. Catalunya, we actually saw Czar, you know, stamp on the brakes before realizing where the line is. The pit lane at Catalunya also has quite a late line. It's a bit deceiving. Some people, you know, hit the brakes really early and just cost themselves a little bit of time coming into pit lane. Some people miss it entirely, and well, you end up with a position like this. So the 96 is going to have to come back down and serve another pit stop, which will be devastating for them, because they were quite high up in the cars that have already pitted, you know, that were back out on track, ahead of Snowy, ahead of ZZ and all those. So it'll be a sad time for the 96 BMW driver.
Yeah, certainly something that I know I've struggled with, of making that pit line in ACC. There's no tolerance really on that pit entry line. It's an unfortunate one. You either need to make sure you give up that half second on entry, or you're going to be costing yourself in realm of 60 seconds of coming into that pit lane, and then another 30 of stopping in that pit box. That's going to be a big penalty for Jinfolf, and unfortunately that's going to drop them likely into the fringes of the top 15, if not further. They're going to be kicking themselves for that. All that takes, just giving up a little bit of time, as we see a battle in the background here from Pablo and ZZ, the McLaren, able to fire it up the inside, as we see ZZ, having taken those repairs as well. You have a clean front end on that car. So this is going to be a healthy Porsche versus a healthy McLaren, and I think Pablo just able to take advantage of that straight line speed advantage that Porsche is really lacking down the main straight.
Yeah, Sarah has also come in. We'll take the V8 Vantage down to their pit box and get it all fixed up. But yeah, the McLarens, we saw a couple of people as they rejoined, you know, the position changes are already starting to come, and Slowbird managing to it's just about slotting behind Snowy, so Snow still in P10 overall, and he'll be back to P9 almost by the time Jinfolf has taken that penalty, so that's a free position gain for them. But the Porsche now right back onto the back of the McLaren. It's going to be another great fight here because we can see what the Porsche can do. Looking up the front of the field as well, talking about people who have pit. Astro Black has come in and Randomy has come in this lap.
Yes, and we actually have our next wave of penalties that are coming in. Some of them having already been served, but they're going to be a 5-second time penalty for car number 43. That's going to be causing a collision, and that is going to be the contact that Ruby had with, I believe it was Jasper, if I'm not mistaken, as well as going to be a 5-second time penalty for car 512. That's also going to be for causing a collision. That would have been, actually, I do not recall which collision that would have been. That would have been lap 8 with Hubble. And then also the noting of car 96's Jinfolf's drive through for speeding in pit lane. Those are just going to be these short notes coming in from the stewards of any penalties. But Pablo is going to be trying to make short work of this Jag, but can't be taking too many risks because they're behind. We see the Porsche of ZZ is right there for the taking and a little bit wide for Pablo. ZZ able to get inside and coming into turn 4. This is right where the Porsche is going to be heading its happy place, and a little bit of grass on the inside, unfortunately, taking away some of that grip for ZZ, and it's going to send him back behind the rear wing of that British racing McLaren, and it's going to be another attempt from ZZ to try to get back up to Pablo, and Glowbird also hoping that these two battle just to try to open a gap. And our race leader, Denak, coming in to finally pit with 4 minutes left in that pit window. It's going to be the start of the end for our pit cycles, but Pablo really wishing that this battle would end so he can get away. And actually, no, it looks like Slowbird might have had an incident dropping down 2, maybe 3 positions, as JPEG's now looking on the inside. Can Slowbird get the drive out? No, so JPEG's going to hold on to that, and this order is now completely flipped on its head.
Yeah, something happened to Slowbird was just before turn 9, and they ended up all being passed by this entire group. And this is also the least envious point of sim racing is when you're in a pack like this. You want to attack the person in front of you, but you've got to be very calculated, because if you make a hash of it, you will you'll open yourselves up to massive time losses and position losses, as now the Jag has fallen down all the way to net 12, as I think there's still Ruby in the pit lane, and you can see them just coming out. But speaking of penalties again, a stop-go 30 for car 63. Astro Black has fallen sort of to the pit lane, so another car has ended up doing the same thing. And up in front now, it's the 2 Porsches, and that McLaren just doesn't look hooked up through turn 3.
And it looks like ZZ's trying to take another look to the inside and maybe going for a little bit of a dive into turn 4. Late breaking move, and that outside line just has no grip. The marbles, we mentioned them earlier in the day, leaving nothing for that McLaren to work with. And now he's going to be stuck trying to defend from JPEG. The Porsche getting a good run out of turn 5 as we go through this left-hand kink of 6 and the uphill into 7. At McLaren really struggling with the high speed, which is a little bit of a surprise coming through that car. So that's really where I'd expect to be the strongest. Perhaps maybe a little bit of floor damage or something picked up, but that does not matter right now because it's going to be Slowbird and JPEG trying to chase down that McLaren. Moves into the braking zone. JPEG unable to get close enough to Pablo to make that move. But I think this might just be a matter of time with what's going on with that McLaren. And certainly something is awry, because we saw Pablo charging through the field, but now there's something going on that's causing them to drop like a stone.
Yeah, very much so. And another stop-go 30, 43. The stop-go 34 speeding in the pit lane. All have been confirmed by the race stewards that those were in-game penalties. Nothing to do with our live stewarding. So the pit lane at Catalunya, maybe one that to some people might need practicing. Now, this is not a site that you want as a Porsche driver. You're on the longest straight of the the circuit, and you have a Jag just creeping in on you. But with the run, and actually it looked like Slowbird backed off there, maybe doesn't want to get involved in this battle. They know that that the JPEG and ZZ are going to battle Pablo, as once again the McLaren runs wide and JPEG keeps the Porsche tucked hard down onto the apex. We've seen it done. The drive from the McLaren will give them the position back though, but this is, you know, he saw with his fellow Porsche driver what you can do. You force the McLaren out wide into turn 4 and you can get it done, but not this time. It's just a little bit too far away.
Yes, and a little bit too far away indeed, as JPEG just wants to use that late braking of that number 12 Porsche machine, but it's just always a bridge too far, too much, or too little too late, and unable to get a nose alongside. But just a note is that we had that stop go 34 Astro in the 63 machine. It seems they are also not going to continue, unknown on what the situation is with them, but they have been in the pits for quite a while and have yet to come out. So unfortunate to see it from their race, but we talked about it before. I just want to bring it up one more time. Surviving this race is key. Czar, who we saw in P2, dropping to P4 immediately off the start, and they're back up in P2 just by surviving. Nothing has been done, nothing spectacular really done for their race, as they've just been trying to keep it alive, and they've kept it alive quite well. JPEG a little bit deep, and now you have one of the fastest cars in this race right on your rear wing, 2/10, 3/10 separating the two, as it's going to be the British machine charging up to the rear wing of JPEG, and the draft is letting that creep in. And the Porsche is going to have to use all of its braking, pinching the Jag a little bit tight to the line. Slowbird still trying to peek in. No, not enough from the Jag driver. Slowbird trying to send a move, but having to back out, not able to get fully alongside, and that's given Pablo a little bit of breathing space, able to tuck up onto the rear wing of ZZ, use a little bit of that straight line advantage that the McLaren has, trying to look on the inside, ZZ leaving a little bit of space, but able to hook it up around the outside. But now JPEG looking on the inside of 4. It's going to turn to the outside of 5. It's going to require some late braking to make it work. And Pablo able to kind of squeeze out that outside line, but inside line goes to JPEG. And it's going to be the inside for 7. A one-line corner. One person's going to have to back out, and it's going to be JPEG who's going to resort to filing back into line. You could argue that might have even had the line for that corner, but just trying to survive this race, as we've said so many times before, is the most important part of this.
Yeah, very much so. JPEG looked up the inside, as he says. He's just trying to get that Porsche where you know, where you can put the McLaren offline. It seems that Sector 1, if JPEG can stay close enough, Sector 1 for that McLaren ahead is not a happy place. If you can put them offline by 4, they really can't do anything about it. But then you get into this part of the circuit, and it seems to be more single file, and as a Porsche driver you well know, once you have someone in front of you who's dictating your corner speed, it makes your lap times just tumble away, because you don't necessarily have the same straight line speed that they do, and all you have to rely on is the late braking. I mean, you can see how much earlier the nose of the Jaguar dips, and the Porsche has still got the foot pinned before it is, but it might be a little bit closer. JPEG actually looking a little bit more defensive into 1, but still, once again, the late brakes from the Porsche, and the Jag has to back out.
And the Jag just trying to make a move, but you'd have to argue that maybe the Jag just run their line just a little bit more, but leave a gap. Try to build that momentum on the Porsche, because what you're seeing is, while the Jag is able to gain on the Porsche on the straights, it is able to open things up a little bit more in terms of lap time. They tend to kill their momentum while they're trying to make an attack. They get right up to the rear wing of the Porsche, and then they stall out a little bit. And the Porsche, the one real thing going for that car coming out is its traction. It doesn't have the straight line speed, but it does have the traction to drive it out and get to its top line speed. So you really need to make sure that you set things up in advance and carry that momentum to counteract that, as JPEG trying to look for any way around. Pablo is a little bit of jerk coming through 9, and this could open it up for Slowbird. Is the momentum there? No, looks like they might be a little bit too far back, so JPEG can breathe easy, but I don't think that breathing easy is going to go for long, because now it's going to be the inside of 10 to 11. Is Pablo going to be able to swing it around and open up 12? JPEG has got to be getting hot under the helmet right now, because this McLaren has been holding them up for ages now, as both of them going deep. Slowbird looking for the inside and gonna be able to take the outside going into the chicane. Yes, able to finish that pass as now JPEG's trying to sort in, able to cut off that position on, I believe, Wolfen in the McLaren. And oh my, this is not going to let up, because JPEG trying to use the momentum to catch up on the Jag, but the tides have turned. You see that Jag using the straight line advantage that they have, just walking away from the Porsche. And this is going to be fruitless coming in from JPEG, unable to get back alongside. Need to hope for that middle sector to be clean to try to get back up onto the rear wing of that outdated Jaguar, but the outdated engine is certainly nothing to scoff at, because that has powered Slowbird into the top 10 fight here, and maybe even into P9, as we saw them having the pace to chase down Pablo. JPEG deep on the brakes, able to avoid the Jag, but that momentum is... Oh, that Porsche needs to keep that momentum, and that momentum is going to be dangerous underneath the stop-start machine like that Jaguar.
Yeah, very much so. And the 12 looking to the inside, trying to use the run, but it wasn't quite enough coming down into the sort of awkward section. The Jag will be ailing here, but this is the turn 9. One of the scariest points for a Porsche owner, because you have to throw the car in, but the weight transfer with the engine almost hung out of the back of that car will want to bite you every single time. And if you don't get that that sort of traction set up right, it will really cause detriment. JPEG having to move over a little bit, looking in the mirror potentially of the blue E car, trying to get, and I think they're trying to unlap themselves with the fresh tyres that they took earlier on, just wanting to recover their race. But the 12 needs to keep their eyes forward, because if you let Slowbird get away, before the just at the start-finish straight, then you really are going to struggle in the Porsche to catch back.
Yeah, you really need to use that Jaguar slipstream right now just to hold back onto the rear end of this train. But something to note is, while this battle's been going on, ZZ's pulled a 2.5 second gap from this battle and is going to be looking ahead, maybe trying to close that gap to Snowy if there's a mistake. That gap might be insurmountable, but just securing that P8 position and getting out of the gaggle of cars behind them, because all three of those cars are battling hard for position, and that every single time that they go side by side, even if you're half a line defensive, that's a couple tenths that's just going to be getting away from you, and that's going to be exactly what JPEG and Slowbird here are going to be trying to avoid, because Pablo is the cork in the bottle here. That McLaren's front end has been struggling all second stint here, and these two drivers know it. They've been hounding the rear end of that McLaren the entire time. All they're seeing is the red of the underside of that wing, and it looks like JPEG could be seeing red looking on the inside of the 7, but it's not going to be there, and it's going to be JPEG having to sit behind for yet another straight, because that Jaguar is going to only run away once again once they're able to open up that throttle. And there we go, as you see the Jaguar starting to walk away, open up the gap from that Porsche and close the gap on the McLaren. It's Slowbird in the 89. Jaguar just tiptoeing it a little bit closer to the McLaren, but that gap, it's staying stagnant now. You'd have to say maybe we're looking at the dirty air finally getting to the wear of this Jag, and maybe even the Porsche behind, to the point that they've worn it out and lost that bite. They've lost that adhesion from the car, and this McLaren might finally be in a position where it has the advantage for the first time in the second half of this race.
Well, the other problem that they've got is that every single time that they, it really matters for the Jag driver to, really be close to the McLaren. They're just too far away because of that kind of outdated car holding them back. When you really want the car to get up and go, it just can't. So you end up with this gap. Even though you'll close in a straight line, it's just no good there. And that in the background as well, I think that's the fellow, that's Fane in the RK9 Motorsport car. It's the number 3, slow on the inside, manages to get the car back going again. Something's happened to Fane, and also they've also picked up a stop-go 30. Once again, I believe that is another speeding in the pit lane.
Yeah, that's going to be really unfortunate from Fane. That's going to be, it looks like, coming from the steward reports, possibly a track limits. No, it actually is going to be a stop. It's going to be speeding in the pit lane. They were brought in for a 15-second time penalty. I believe thought they had to serve it, and unfortunately gave himself a stop-go trying to do exactly that. So unfortunate from Fane. That is going to really hinder their race in the final closing stages here, and they're going to be kicking themselves for that as well. But you live and you learn. That's why we're running the SAM Championship. We're letting these drivers learn and develop their skill sets and prove themselves against each other, because we have 3 drivers here that are still trying to prove themselves into that P9 position. Pablo still the cork in the bottle here, followed by Slowbird, and the Jag with a little bit of contact with the curb, losing the rear, and that's going to be Slowbird able to get it snap back around, but JPEG up into P10 now, Slowbird in the 11th, and Pablo can finally breathe easily. That gap is opened up enough that they can focus on themselves, as we see Jinfolf making a move on Neo for P12, just trying to take another position home, get a couple extra points, as that's going to be crucial come to the end stage of this championship. But good to see we have drivers still pushing, trying to get any points that they can, as Neo is struggling a little bit on traction. Believe they were also one of the earlier cars to pit, so perhaps the tires degrading on them a little bit more than the rest of the field and causing a little bit of struggles here in the late stages.
Yeah, and also from what we've been sort of hearing in the Discord and, you know, up and down, is that Neo also, round 1, was on a controller, but they have decided to swap. They bought themselves a wheel, but now that's kind of a whole new aspect, you know, to relearn yourself. So yeah, a little bit of the power underfoot and having to, you know, get used to the traction control systems in the BMW obviously will affect your pace, but you've got to bring it back around. And as he says, the only way you learn is by doing, and it's kind of the long or the short of it in sim racing. You don't wake up, well, apart from the few people who I've met who seem to have natural talent, you don't wake up and be fast. You're gonna have to work at it, and he says that is what this championship's for all these drivers, to get just a little bit more time under the belt, a little bit more experience actually at racing people, and then the you know, hopefully the lap times will start to improve, the racing etiquette and everything, because it's, you know, it's hard to gain just on yourself, and AI racing doesn't really do it.
No, it does not. You can never substitute the unpredictability of racing another driver. As while there are things that you can expect them to do, there are always going to be things that you have to react to and make sure that you have accounted for in case something goes wrong. But what looks like it's going wrong is Pablo is still struggling with the front of that McLaren, as we see JPEG has closed right back up after dodging the spinning Slowbird in the chicane. The Porsche actually able to hang on to the back of that McLaren, and that might be the first time in a while I've seen that. Possibly Pablo running a little bit extra aero, having possibly damage that could hurt the front end of the McLaren. I know it is a very aero-sensitive car. Any damage, especially running in a high downforce trim, could really be hurting them here.
Yeah, it also helps when the Porsche got a little bit of a buff. The 64 ran wide, but a big twitch there from the 12 of JPEG, still trying to catch the car in the background. The Blue E driver just trying to find some space on the road, trying to get by. These two are fighting tooth and nail, but yeah, the Porsche did get a little tiny bit of a buff in a couple of patches ago. It gave it some more straight line speed. It means that you aren't as much as a sitting duck anymore, and I think in the slipstream it really gains now, whereas before it kind of just held station in a slipstream, whereas now you can actually get a little bit of a gain. The flash of the lights there, the 12 wants that position. They've got themselves up into the top 10, but for JPEG he might want that top 9, as the Blue E driver is going to fire it up the inside, and there's contact.
Oh no, contact from JPEG. That Blue E driver was trying to overtake for, just trying to get their lap back. Yeah, Wolfen trying to get their lap back and jumping into the battle with the Porsche, but that McLaren's never going to outbreak the Porsche. The question remains now, did JPEG pick up any damage from that? It looked like it might have been enough that they could have gotten away with it, maybe just a couple tenths that it doesn't affect the car, but that very easily could have caused seconds worth of damage. But I don't think JPEG's focused on that. I think JPEG is solely focused on trying to get up ahead, but nope, Zara sneaking on by, blue flags as JPEG lets them by, and is going to follow suit, as maybe they'll get Pablo to move out of the way, follow through that car ahead. Could be a little bit of racecraft coming in from the number 12 driver here.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe, trying to get it on, trying to use Zara as kind of the battering ram to get through. And something happened to the 89 as well, local yellow, that was almost on the main straight. So once again, something has happened to the to Slowbird in the old school Jaguar. They've put themselves still P11. They haven't lost a position. They've just lost some time to Jim Forth behind them. But Jag in the late stages of the race is not really being the happy car that it was once at the start.
No, not at all. I mean, we know that the front left on this track is already quite punishing, and if I'm not mistaken, it's the front left on the Jag as well that is a little bit more wear, a little bit more higher wear. That's JPEG looking on the inside of 9. We don't see him move there very often, as it looks like he is going to have to file back in line. The McLaren getting the better run on the straight, and Wolfman, I believe, was sent a little bit wide, trying to avoid the change in speed there, as we see both cars going a little bit deep here. Certainly neither one of these drivers here are leaving anything on the table, strangling those tires for every ounce of grip that they have left in them.
Well, especially when you look up as a driver and you realize that, you know, the clock's ticking down 5 minutes and almost 30 seconds. And you start doing the math of thinking, well, if the leader's here, how many laps more have I got? How many times have I got left that I can attack this guy? But a bit of a bad exit from the 12 will leave them in the wake of the McLaren. But we know Sector 1, they will catch that back up. And as he says, you start doing the mental countdown. How many times more am I going to get the go? But you start having to make some moves. And if everything up to that point hasn't worked, you have to think of something a little bit different.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a very tight battle coming in to the line here. As we've seen, Pablo's done a very good job of holding JPEG here. Not exactly defending in very inappropriate areas and making sure that they always have an exit strategy in case something goes wrong. The only time that we've ever seen JPEG get a real chance is when in mid-corner and entry, Pablo struggled with the front end of that McLaren, maybe gone a little bit wide, especially in turn 3. That's where we've really seen it the most. And other than that, JPEG's just been hounding their rear wing, but unable to really get a massive overlap. You know, looking to the inside here, trying to scare Pablo and maybe got them go and kill their momentum a little bit. The JPEG unable to get the exit out, but this is going to keep them just that little bit closer. If a bad exit comes here from Pablo, maybe a little bit of a twitch, a little bit wide, this could be the opportunity JPEG's needed. Going to be the inside line for Pablo, and that's going to be inside for turn 11 as well. JPEG cutting late, looking for the cutback, and Pablo's a little bit late, and JPEG finally, after laps and laps of trying, finally able to clear the McLaren, as Pablo's going to have to concede, going a little bit late into that hairpin, and that's going to be JPEG finally. A big sigh of relief and a round of applause, because that was all race long that JPEG was fighting tooth and nail for that one position with Pablo. And certainly maybe not anything more that they can get out of this race, but it's something they'll be looking at with fond memories for how hard they had to fight for that.
And Wolfin also got through, so now there's one car that's sort of a safety buffer between the Porsche of JPEG and the 64 of Pablo. But yeah, that's kind of what I mentioned. You always have to be within earshot, you know, to make sure that you know any opportunity does come, and you have to try something different. You have to keep filling the mirrors. That one tiny mistake, the run was compromised. You had to put your Porsche there, make them go to the inside on the unfavorable line, brake late to try and block you off, but it didn't work. And just the cutback maneuver, very classic maneuver, and up it goes. But JPEG, it shows how much Pablo was the cork in the bottle, because he's now raced up and he's challenging ZZ with 2 minutes and 40 to go. Especially with the leader where they are, I think it will be 2 more laps. I'm going to hazard a guess as ZZ goes a little bit wider. JPEG has to avoid.
Ooh, yes, a big snap from JPEG, trying to make a mid-quarter correction there for ZZ's speed. And in the Porsche, that's the last thing you want to do, because that rear engine placement is just going to try to throw the rear of the car around. You're absolutely right. JPEG has absolutely clawed time back to ZZ. Now we're going to see another hard battle, because ZZ and JPEG, same exact car. As we see, Chloe is snuck back out on track, trying to claw back a couple more laps. Like we talked about, all points will matter, even if it's just one more position on Astro here. That could be important come the championship battle by the end of the season. Although, if I'm not mistaken, they're both national, so this could just be a little bit of pride, just trying to finish a little bit higher up on the standing sheet. But we're going to see JPEG with a good run jumping back on board, and it's going to be Porsche v Porsche. and it's going to be the run into turn 1. A little bit of slipstream pulling JPEG along as he pulls out to the outside line, using a little bit of curb for some extra space. ZZ tucking into that inside line, hugging around the outside. No, JPEG unable to hang it out. ZZ cutting off that line for turn 2, and this could be the final chance coming up here. We have turn 10 and maybe turn 1 again, but after that, you'd have to reckon that there's not going to be many chances for JPEG to get it done. So it's going to be here and now, or it's not going to happen at all.
Yeah, very much so. Time's running out for the number 12 as time is ticking down more and more. I think we're going to get one more lap because this man here, Denak, the Tig Gang Racing Ferrari, has just completely driven away with it. A best lap of a 44.7, and in averages of the low 45s. It has been just a phenomenal charge from the 54, and there you go. As the cross the line, the white flag has been waved. It's the last lap. It's the last lap for any positions left on the table. Looking at the field, though, the only person who's close enough to get that position is JPEG, and he's going to look to the inside. He's going to really try hassle the Porsche down there. There was almost a Porsche-sized gap trying to make ZZ, you know, defend and think about it, but very, very, very good defense, though, from ZZ. Knew not to be flustered. Take your line, and you know that JPEG can't make that position stick.
Yeah, and we've seen JPEG being extremely aggressive here with ZZ because they know time is running out. They don't have time to kind of let things rest anymore. It is here and now. And that first sector is where JPEG is going to be extremely strong relative to their fellow Porsche and ZZ there. Because every single time we run onto that back straight, there is a massive time gap that has been clawed back. It's just a matter of getting close enough to be able to make the move. And JPEG's race now rests in the hands of this driver randomly moving past ZZ. Is it going to be in a position that JPEG can take advantage of? Once again, trying to use a little bit of that racecraft. ZZ needs to move and concede this position once Randomy gets alongside, as Randomy is the lap up car taking the inside, but is JPEG going to be looking to the inside here? Possible contact with ZZ. It looks like it was just avoided, as JPEG is now going to try to carry that momentum through. This is where the 12 has been stronger than the 18, and it's all going to be about setting up the run. We've seen JPEG try to take a look on the inside here. Will he try to move ZZ around? Denak taking the P1 with a dominant drive, I must say, but we have to quickly run back because it could be JPEG taking that P8 spot, and this is going to be the final chance. Bar any mistakes, is ZZ going to be able to hang on? The gap looks rather large. It might be able to be done by JPEG if they get some kind of crossing line. ZZ taking the defensive line. JPEG will have the momentum, but coming into 11 and 12, it might be too little too late, but right on the rear wing. Any mistake from ZZ, this could be it, as it looks like going to be JPEG making that mistake, and a little bit of time lost. ZZ just needs to hang it together, keep it away from those curbs, son, and you're going to be able to bring it home in that P8. And yes, it's going to be 8 for ZZ. Zar coming home with a quiet second. Randomy finishing in with that third for a 1-3 for the Tingag Racing team. This is going to be going down the order. ZZ 8th, JPEG 9th, coming back through the order. Alex with a very quiet P4, but also to note, KM Sarah has come home with a very, very quiet P5. Remember, they had that incident with Pablo early on in the race that spun them around, and then they were able to recover on raw pace back up to P5 and able to take home a top 5 finish for them. And that's going to be another quiet drive. Many of these AM drivers just learning to finish the race is going to finish them in a good position. Learning that racecraft and just making it to the end. I think Sarah has proven that it's not just a quiet race. Being able to storm in those fast laps, even after you have an incident, it can also be mega to your final position.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, and a lot of these drivers that have shaken up as well. It's going to be, you know, big bucket loads of points shaken up in the championship. You know, Sarah didn't necessarily gain a lot of points in round 1, will gain a lot of points today, and Snowy has managed to outpace Slowbird today. That will jump those around. This is the thing with the AM championships. A lot of times that we see in a lot of series, is that the points always jump around. It is so close come the end, just with, the getting used to the track. What is a really strong track for one person will be their weakest track, and vice versa. It just goes to show that every single point left on the table will help come towards the end of this season.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen now what three different, or not, sorry, not three different drivers. We've seen, I believe, six different drivers on the overall podium so far. And if that doesn't shout that this championship is open for anyone, I don't know what does. Because even though Denak did technically finish first on the road last time out, that drive through did knock them back. They're not invulnerable to any kind of mistakes, as we've seen, and that could open up for anyone else. This is a wide open championship, and as well as, even though they've gotten that first and fourth in the first two rounds, all it takes is one bad race, one bad instant coming to turn one, you pick up a lot of damage, and that could be open for anyone else. So it's not just for these mid-pack drivers. This entire championship is completely open, as we've only have 2 of 4 rounds completed, and some of the circuits that we have coming up next are going to be prone to generating chaos. I mean, look ahead, we have Misano, which is going to be massive for any drivers that want to carry through speed. You see a lot of fights that will be going on, as that is originally a motorcycle track, and a lot of those sweeping corners opens up battling. Zandvoort, another hard track to get past. That's going to be a lot of bashing and barging, trying to gain any kind of positions. Then Brands Hatch, the classic crown of British motorsports. It's going to be, any mistake is going to immediately bite you back on that track. The grass on the side of the track's very on the limit corners. I mean, if you blink, this championship could completely turn on its head in a moment's notice.
Oh, very much so. And well, like I said, going through what a race that we've had today, and it's only when you look at the track list going forwards, it's only gonna, I think, get better. Be Tig Gang Racing's Denak wins by a landslide today. They're really, really hooked up with that Ferrari. Just got it going, and this time no drive-throughs. But hope I'm interested to see, and we might ask the drivers after the race. Wonder how many track limits, if anyone got to 3. We saw some people running off and having incidents, but obviously it depends what the game calculates it as a cut, or if it was just an off that you didn't gain any time on. But sadly, that will be all from us today, and well, that'll be all from us for 2022, as the next race on the calendar is in January of next year, which is quite a weird thing to say when you say I'll see you next year, apart from it is only a few weeks. So once again, thank you for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you in chat, watching, all the drivers who've made, this season as of so far, and just a great 2022 to Simufur, really. What we've managed to achieve and come on, and there's been some really great racing, and well, I don't think 2023 is going to slow down at all.
Yeah, no, I think this is the precursor to a great rest of our season, but also for what we have to come in 2023. Many things in store, not just in ACC and not just with AmChamp. We have many things coming, but for the rest of the year, we have to wish you a happy holidays and a good rest of your year, as this has been us at Simufur, and you have a good night.